Okay, got it. Yep, we got it. Guys, tonight is going to be crazy. We're going to visit, we're going to revisit two cities in a different light, and we're going to visit two cities we haven't been to yet. We'll be talking about these four cities that are considered holy cities in our tradition and see some of the sites that sustain our connection as a Jewish people to them. The four cities we'll visit tonight are Hebron, which is not my favorite place to be, then back up to the Galilee to do a somewhat in-depth visit of Sfat and Tiberias. We will be seeing a lot of synagogues, a lot of really pretty ones. And we will end our tour in my favorite place, Yerushalayim. The four holy cities have been associated with, in medieval times, with the view of the four elements that sustain the earth. Earth, air, water, and fire, and each city is associated with one of them, and I'll talk about that. During our tour tonight, we will also explore our connection to each city, to the element which is associated with. The holy cities that I have not visited, the one holy city I've not visited is Hebron, and I think I have to switch slides. Wait a minute. Jason, I need you. Hebron. Yay! I did it by myself. Woo! I could actually do this class. When looking up the city on the internet, and one of the things I don't like about the internet, considering mine crashed today, or supposedly crashed, it is listed as a Palestinian city in the southern West Bank, 30 kilometers south of Jerusalem. And that's where I think what the internet has to say ends. It's located in the Judean mountains at 930 meters above sea level. Hebron is the largest city in the West Bank and the second largest in the Palestinian territories after Gaza. The population is over 215,000 Palestinians and only about 700 Jewish settlers concentrated in the outskirts of the old city of Hebron. Probably one of the reasons I don't like going there. I've never been to Hebron. I have no intention of going to Hebron. I don't really go in places where they don't like us. Hebron, however, is an important site in our history. Hebron includes the cave of Machpelah, the cave of the patriarchs, which is holy in both Judeo-Christian and Islamic traditions, all designated as a burial site of three patriarchal and matriarchal couples, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob and Leah. We talked about why Rachel's not buried there because she died on the way back to where they were going. Judaism ranks Hebron as the second holiest city after Jerusalem, while Muslims regard it as one of their four holy cities. As you can see, the city of Hebron itself is highly contested politically and is mostly an Arab Muslim town today. The word Hebron is explained to describe a friend, a chaver, as Abraham was described for his relationship to God and to others, because he was very welcoming of other people. Historically, Hebron was the capital of Judah, and King David ruled there for 7.5 years before the capital was replaced with Jerusalem. Archaeological excavations reveal traces of strong fortifications dating back to an early Bronze Age. And the city flourished in the 17th to 18th centuries BCE before being destroyed by fire and was later resettled in the Middle Bronze Age. The older Hebron was originally a Canaanite royal city, but Abrahamic tradition sees it as nomadic. In much more recent history, the 20th century, Hebron has an even more contentious past. In August of 1929, 67 out of 69 Jews living in Hebron at the time were killed by Arabs, incited to violence by a rumor that the Jews were planning to seize control of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Today, officially part of Israel, it is governed by the Palestinian Authority. However, the city is still under Israeli military control and has a full brigade there to protect the Jewish residents living in the old quarter. Enough with politics. Let's tour some of the Jewish spots of interest. I think you can still see it. Yeah. The Abraham Avinu Synagogue was built by Hakam Malkiel Ashkenazi in the Jewish quarter in 1540. The dome structure, you can sort of see the dome there, represented the physical center of the Jewish quarter of Hebron and became a spiritual center for the Jewish community there and a major center for the study of Kabbalah. The tomb of Jesse and Ruth. Okay, these are just the cave of Machpelah. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, no, never mind. We're going to go back. The caves of Jesse and Ruth. Ruth, as you know, one of our ancestors, and Jesse, one of her descendants, are located within the ruin of Der al-Arba'im in the Tel Rumeda section of Hebron. A small synagogue in a room adjacent to the tomb receives visitors throughout the year, especially, and of course, during the Jewish holiday of Shavuot, when the book of Ruth is read. The cave of the patriarchs, or tomb of the patriarchs, as it's known to Jews, and the sanctuary of Abraham, as it's known to the Muslims, is a series of caves, and you can sort of see going down into the caves there, and the heart of the old city of Hebron. Over the cave stands a large rectangular enclosure dating to Herodian times. During Byzantine rule, a basilica was built there, and then it was later converted to the Abrahamic mosque following the Muslim conquest. In the 12th century, the area was taken by Crusaders, but retaken in 1188 by the Sultan Saladin, who again converted the structure into a mosque. As you can see, the trouble in Hebron doesn't start recently. After the 1967 war, when the West Bank was seized by Israel, the structure was divided into a synagogue and a mosque. However, there's been a great deal of fighting, including many deaths over this site since that time. Let's go to do something a bit more pleasant, okay? You can get a view of the Tel Rumeda neighborhood and a panoramic view of both the Jewish and the Palestinian-controlled parts of Hebron from the Tel Hebron Observatory. You can see people taking pictures from it. Real interesting. Okay, let's go on. Tel Rumeda is an agricultural and residential location on a slope west of Hebron. And it includes a museum, a playground, and a guest house. Okay. We couldn't find a picture of this, but on October 14, 2022, the UNESCO Hebron Rehabilitation Committee, along with the Consul General of Sweden in Jerusalem and the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, with participation from local and international partners, celebrated the inauguration of the Old Hebron Museum after completing the rehabilitation of the abandoned historic building of the Palestine Hotel. If you want to see it, you can go to that website. Let's go ahead.
Andy, see if you can click that link.
I'll go back. I'll click the link. Didn't do anything last time.
Oh, I think it's working now.
There we go. That's the ribbon cutting for the Old Hebron Museum. Yay! We've done a lot of ribbon cutting this course, and everybody looks happy and getting along with each other. Hey, that's good for Hebron. Okay, going ahead. I go ahead. Hebron has 3 universities: Hebron University, the Palestine Polytechnic University, and the Al-Quds Open University Hebron campus. We talked about the Al-Quds University when we were talking about the Galil. They also have places in the Galil. Each of these institutions contributes to the development of Hebron society locally, as well as the furtherance of Palestinian education and advancement internationally. I'm not sure what that means. I'm hoping that they're learning to get along with us, but I'm not holding my breath. All these offer unique strengths in educating young men and women. The Excellence Center works with each to develop language programs, volunteer placements, and community relations. Okay, before leaving Hebron, I think we have to change slides. We'll go back to our theme for tonight, the holy cities. As I said previously, each holy city is associated with a basic element by the rabbis. Hebron is associated with earth, or Adamah, dirt, because of the presence of the graves of our forefathers and foremothers. Okay, next one. Tonight we're going to revisit the Galilee and 2 cities in the Galilee, known as holy cities for Jews, Tiberias and Sfat. However, tonight we'll explore both these cities, doing some of the religious sightseeing. Okay. I want to start my journey tonight with the grave of Rabbi Yochanan, or as he was known, Yochanan ben Nafcha, who lived from 180 to 279 CE. He was a leading rabbi in the early era of the Talmud. He belonged to the 2nd generation Amoraim, and his opinion is quoted thousands of times across the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmud. The compilation of the Jerusalem Talmud is generally ascribed to him. Where are the other pages? Never mind. Rabbi Yochanan was born in Sepphoris in the Galilee, but at some point moved to Tiberias, where he opened an academy for Jewish learning. He was unusual and controversial for his time because he would let anyone study there, where other academies were more, they didn't let anyone study. You really had to be somebody to get in there. Tiberias and the surrounding area are home to a number of tombs and other sites related to great rabbis of the diaspora. The greatest of these we have already visited, but a second trip to the tomb of Moshe ben Maimon, or Maimonides, is always a good idea. He's considered the greatest sage of the Middle Ages, and Isaac's shaking his head, right? In his time, in the time of Maimonides, he split his time between Tiberias and Jerusalem, not being sure of which one was more holy, but instructed in his will to be buried in Tiberias. And we go to the grave? Where's the grave site? What? Go. That's not the grave site. As I said previously in this class, the museum built around the gravesite is worth a visit of at least a half a day. The place of the tomb of Maimonides is also the burial site of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Israel Horowitz. Ben Zakkai continued Jewish study after the destruction of the Second Temple, being smuggled out of Jerusalem in a coffin and then starting an academy of Jewish learning in Yavne. Also next to Maimonides' grave is the grave of Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes. Rabbi Meir, the miracle maker, was a Jewish sage who lived in the time of the Mishnah. According to the Talmud, his father was a descendant of Roman Emperor Nero, but converted to Judaism. His wife, Bruria, is one of the few women cited in the Gemara. He is the third most frequently mentioned sage in the Mishnah. His statement on the death of his two sons on one Shabbat was Adonai noten, Adonai lakach, Shem Adonai mevorach. God gives and God takes away. May the name of God be praised. And that's often quoted. Before leaving Tiberias, a trip to the gravesite of Rabbi Akiva, who was not buried with all the other rabbis, would be worthwhile. I didn't visit there when I was visiting Tiberias with my son and daughter-in-law at that time, and my very, very small granddaughter, Meirav. Who just had her 11th birthday, but my time in Tiberias, I date back to going places with her. It would be a great place to visit, and I'd love to visit the gravesite of Rabbi Akiva, but it's hard to find. It's sort of off on one of the hillsides, and I still haven't found it. Rabbi Akiva, for those of you that don't remember, died during the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE. He didn't start studying until the age of 40, but became one of the most esteemed sages in the Talmud. Before leaving Tiberias, you might be wondering which essential element of the world is associated with this holy place. Tiberias, because it is on Lake Yam Kinneret, is associated with water. Okay. We're going to go to Sfat again, one of my favorite places. The Abuhar Synagogue in Sfat is a 15th century synagogue named after the 15th century Spanish rabbi and Kabbalist Isaac Abuhar. The design is said to be based on Kabbalistic teachings, and according to the tradition of Rabbi Abuhar, who designed the synagogue, and his disciples erected the building in Sfat when they arrived in the 1490s after the expulsion from Spain. Another legend claims the synagogue was miraculously transported from Spain to Sfat. The synagogue was almost completely destroyed in the 1837 earthquake, and only the southern wall containing the arks remains standing and exists today as a remnant of the original building. The bima has 6 steps up, representing the 6 work days, and the top level, the 7th, representing Shabbat. The Holy Ark has 3 sections containing Torah scrolls, traditionally written by Abuhar himself, and the third one from Solomon Ohana from Fez, Morocco. As you will see, we are visiting a lot of beautiful, very different from each other synagogues in Sfat. The next one we will see is the Ashkenazi Ha'ari Synagogue. It was built in the 16th century on the northern fringes of Sfat neighborhood in the old city of Sfat. It was built in memory of Rabbi Isaac Yitzchak Luria, the Ari, who died in 1572. The Ari is credited with writing parts of Kabbalah. There is also a small Sephardic synagogue of the Ari. It seems to be a small place which I have not visited, but intend to look for on my next trip. One of the most famous synagogues in Sfat is the Yosef Karo Synagogue. And it's a must when visiting there. It's a beautiful ancient synagogue preserved with great authenticity. When there, try to get on a tour of the premises. Rabbi Karo was the author of the last codification of Jewish law, the Bet Yosef, which we studied a little in Isaac's class, and its popular analog, the Shulchan Aruch. He is often referred to as Mechaber or as Maran. The Chabad movement not only has a post-high school seminary for women in Sfat, but a hostel and a cheap place to stay at the very base of the town, downhill from everything else, which is great because you don't have to walk up the hill, which Sfat's uphill everywhere. I stayed there once over Shabbat when I went to a late Thursday night wedding in Sfat. The accommodations were sparse, but the meals and the friendly service were great. And it was relatively cheap. Of course, I shared a room and a bathroom with 3 other women. Another synagogue in Sfat that I could not find is a great Bresler synagogue. Bresler Hasidim follow the teachings of the famous teacher, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who is buried in Uman, Ukraine. People often make pilgrimages to his gravesite in around Rosh Hashanah. All my father's family are from Uman, and my son visited there one Rosh Hashanah to Rabbi Nachman's graves. And before leaving Sfat, or upon entering it, a trip to the famous cemetery is quite interesting. I spent a whole afternoon there with my son as he toured me through it. There's actually a map, I think, that takes you through it. It's on a hillside overlooking, you can see the cemetery. It's gorgeous. I mean, if a cemetery can be beautiful, that's a beautiful cemetery. It is on a hillside overlooking the whole valley, and on a clear day, you can see all the way to Tiberias. Many great rabbis are buried there. There's a whole list of them, including Rabbi Karo. I could have gone through and spent another hour just telling you who's buried there and what they did, but it's definitely worth a trip. One could easily spend hours there, and many people go there right before Shabbat to pay their respects. And believe it or not, there's also a mikveh there that some people stop at. I find the name of the cemetery rather ironic. It's called Beit HaChayim, the house of life, which in my mind is an ironic name for a cemetery. As you can see, I would spend days wandering around Sfat, although very crowded, especially in the summer, when the mountain mountains are cooler, and it's a very heady space to visit. I guess because of its altitude and because of its physically and spiritually high. Sfat is considered by our ancestors to be associated with the element of the air. We're up to my favorite place in Israel. Last and in my opinion, best and holiest of all cities in Judaism is Jerusalem. I love Jerusalem. I could just wander there forever. Okay, first, just a second, close your eyes and picture Jerusalem. What do you see? Lots of stone and dust. The city all the buildings have to be built with Jerusalem stone in the new city. Lots of old buildings and structures. And every part of Jerusalem, every step you take has a history. There's no way to tour Jerusalem in one night virtually, or even in several nights. But in my tour, I will try to cover as much as possible. The obvious one place that everybody would talk about is the Kotel, the Wailing Wall. Although there are difficulties with women davening there, that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother night. The women's section of the Kotel is an amazing place to be Erev Tisha B'Av, the night of Tisha B'Av. The last time I was there, I was with a friend, actually the daughter of a friend who was at that point the fiance of my youngest son. They eventually broke off and married other people. But we grabbed elbows and pushed our way through the crowd of women. It was like wall to wall women. And finally got up to the Kotel. We prayed a little bit, put some notes in the wall, which is in the cracks, which is the custom to do, and then had to push our way back, giving way for other women to have their chance. Kever David, David's tomb, is believed to be the site of the burial place of the biblical King David. It's located on Mount Zion, just outside the old city walls. Although the authenticity of the site has long been in question, it is still a sacred site for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. There are tours of the tomb site, which are worthwhile. And it's also a place where people come in to pray and say psalms, especially the night of Tisha B'Av. I stopped there with my son and my daughter-in-law, and we spent about 15-20 minutes immersing ourselves in psalms. The place just gives itself to doing psalms, and it's so easy to just pray there. Okay, we're going to go on to the southern wall. On the southern side of the Temple Mount was built during King Herod's expansion of the Temple Mount. There's a small building in the courtyard run by the Reform movement near the southern wall that has a space for mixed minyanim. I can remember the only time that I was able to read Torah and help with a Shacharit service to celebrate the B'nai Mitzvah of 3 of our recent kids from my synagogue in Ridgewood. We did a service there so that they could have an aliyah there and someone could read Torah for them. It was the only place, as I said, that I was allowed to participate equally in davening in Jerusalem. And the Reform movement has a small museum and allows all of the liberal movements places to daven or have services when they make reservations there. There are other places in Jerusalem that I like to pray. Change the slide. One of them is in a bomb shelter in the neighborhood of Nachlaot. Kol Rina, the name of the congregation, on Friday nights has a Shlomo Carlebach style service with lots of singing and dancing. It's a hard place to find, and sometimes it's standing room only, but I find it fun. I think the women's section is more fun than the men's section. Joe said the men's section was a little crowded and stuffy. But if you like Carlebach melodies, it's a great place to go. My favorite place to daven is Shira Chadasha. That's the outside of Shira Chadasha. It's hard to find because the sign is really small. It's in the Emek Rafayim neighborhood and has a sliding mechitza, and Torah is read from both sides, and davening is led from both sides by both men and women. And during the sermon, the mechitza somehow disappears. Although it is clearly an Orthodox synagogue, it was an inspiring place to pray. People trying to bring traditional Judaism in a very traditional holy city into modern times. Jerusalem, of course, has been destroyed many times and rebuilt. So it is known as the city of fire and ash. Before leaving Jerusalem, we should probably do some things besides visit synagogues. The Machaneh Yehuda Shuk is the best known place to shop before Shabbat. Machaneh Yehuda is an area right near the bus station. My son and daughter-in-law used to live there in a teeny tiny little apartment with steps up to it that looked like a glorified ladder. One of my favorite vendors in Machaneh Yehuda is as I call him, the chalva guy. There are so many different flavors of chalva, I get stuck. It's worse than an ice cream shop. But I have even smuggled chalva home from that shop for a friend of mine. My other favorite places are the fruits and vegetable people on Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, screaming over each other, trying to attract customers with their lower prices. There are also stalls for buying clothing, and I especially like the bakeries. But one of my favorite places to go is the kippah guy, who's got just about the last stall going out onto Agrippa Street, which is one of the main streets. The market goes from Yafo Street, the main drag in Jerusalem, all the way through to Agrippa Street, and off of Agrippa Street was where my son lived. The meat market, which was my daughter-in-law's favorite place to buy chickens on Thursday, is a great place to go. Of course, there are 50 people and they're all trying to buy chickens at the same time. And somehow my daughter-in-law always got enough chicken for Shabbos for everybody. I have no idea how she did that, because she's really kind of a shy person. My other favorite place to go outside of the shuk, down the block a little bit, is the pastry, the It's a pastry shop that does blocking now. It's a great pastry shop. It's got all kinds of great pastries, and they
Rugala?
rugula and all kinds of other stuff. But also down the block from that is the bread store, and if you wait till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Friday afternoon, to get challah, you can get it very cheap, or when they're closing, they'll even give it away free. My notes are mixed up. My other favorite place to go is right up the block from the shuk, is my favorite falafel stand in Jerusalem. When my son's family lived off of Agrippus, a couple of blocks away, in the evening, I would go up to the falafel stand. And at that time, my oldest granddaughter would be so busy that she'd forget to eat. So I'd look and I'd say, Meravi, we're going to split falafel, right? And 8, 9 o'clock at night, I'd go up and order a falafel bepita to share with my very young granddaughter. And 8 or 9 o'clock, somehow the falafel still tasted absolutely delicious, probably more so. The last place just on the outside of the shuk that I'd like to stop on Friday afternoons was the bakery, because the smell, you can smell it miles away. And, you know, the challah was dirt cheap or free. I love going to Machaneh Yehuda shuk and consider the merchandise there of highest quality, even higher quality than the Arab shuk in the old city. And I never feel like I'm getting ripped off. Speaking of the old city, although I have never done it, there's a tour of the top of the walls, which sounds great, which I really want to do. Walking around the old city is great, but there are also small bus tours for all the entrances to the old city, each gate, whether currently in use or not, with a history of each of the gates. There were originally 12 gates, most of them not used now. The Jaffa Gate is very busy and the main tourist entrance to East Jerusalem from the new city. And it's named that because it comes in off of Jaffa Street, the main drag. Talk about the Damascus Gate next, which takes you to the Kotel through the Arab quarter and the Christian quarter. It's the nearest gate when you're coming down from Mea Shearim, the most famous ultra-Orthodox neighborhood that borders the old city and the new city. I've gone in there many times. Interesting, but not my favorite entrance. My favorite entrance is through the Dung Gate. Yes, dung, like, yeah. It was named that because, and it's worth walking down. It's hard to find because you got to go through a bunch of Arab neighborhoods to get there. But if you go, you hang a louis from the Jaffa Gate and you hug the wall and you go through sort of like an Arab village, you can get there. It's worth the trip, since the Dung Gate is the closest entrance near the Kotel. On my last trip to Jerusalem, that's just what I did. I believe it was called the Dung Gate because at one time during Muslim conquest, all the garbage was stored there. We'll now take a short tour of the 7 gates of the old city. The gates of Jerusalem, as we have them today, are for the most part built or renovated by the Ottomans in the 1500s. However, the gates were, in some cases, built on the foundations of earlier gates, perhaps dating back as far as Nehemiah, who built the second temple, or Solomon, who built the first temple. There were supposedly at one time 12 gates heading into the temple area. Those gates were the Hulda gate, the double gates, triple gates, a single gate, and lesser known gate sites of Jerusalem. The sheep gate is mentioned in New Testament writing. The area of the old city, which is home to the Arab quarter and the Christian quarter, and the Armenian quarters and the Jewish quarter, adjoin the Temple Mount and are guarded by primarily 8 gates. 4 of those gates face cardinal directions: the Damascus Gate to the north, the Golden Gate to the east, the Zion Gate to the south, and the Jaffa Gate to the west. The remaining gates are the Flower or Herod's Gate, the Lion Gate, the Dome Gate, as we said before, and the New Gate. Each gate possesses multiple names. I will only take the Jaffa Gate. The Jaffa Gate is a great place to go in because the street is wide and narrow, and the reason it's called the Jaffa Gate is because it faces west towards the port of Jaffa, and is the only gate in the western side of the old city. It's very wide, as I said, and it's the main vehicle point of entry into East Jerusalem, and only one of 2 that allow vehicle traffic. The Jaffa Gate is probably the busiest one for pedestrian traffic as well. Just inside the Jaffa Gate is a structure believed to be part of King Herod's palace foundation. Herod built 3 towers there too. One of them is now known as the Tower of David, and it stands just inside the Jaffa Gate. There's a museum worth visiting in the Tower of David. Coming out of the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of Mea Shearim, I believe following Hanaviim Street, crossing over the walls around the old city, is the Damascus Gate, which takes you through the Arab quarter and the Christian quarter, and essentially gets you to the Kotel. In the Christian quarter, you can walk on the Via Dolorosa, the same steps that supposedly Jesus took to his crucifixion by the Romans. As in the Christian quarter is the Church of the Ascension, where Jesus was laid out after his crucifixion. It is run by several Christian churches, but I believe today the day-to-day activities are done by the Greek Orthodox Church. There is also a tour of the church, which was very worthwhile. The people were very welcoming, and they pointed out all of what was important to them, and it's a beautiful church. The Zion Gate is the closest to the city of David and to the Hezekiah tunnels, only accessible in the summertime and the dry season, because in the wintertime they fill up with water and you can't really get in there because you could drown. The Zion Gate is also the closest gate to the diaspora yeshiva, where my youngest son frequently crashed, schnorred meals, and even sometimes studied. You can also find buses and taxis easily accessible outside the Zion Gate. The last gate I'll talk about is Dung Gate. Aptly named, as I said before, because the Arabs used to store the garbage there. It is, as I discovered, the closest gate to the plaza for the hotel. However, to get there from the Jewish neighborhood of Katamon, you need to walk through a bunch of some not so friendly Arab neighborhoods, or just hug the wall going down from the Zion Gate and you get there. I found it a very, very good gate to go to, because you walk in, you walk down a few steps, and you're at the hotel. Before we close tonight, I want to take you back up the hill from the old city, past some of the fancy apartment buildings. They built very fancy apartment buildings, and a wall of gorgeous shops, none of which I can afford on my current budget, to an iconic part of Jerusalem, the YMCA Tower. We got the YMCA Tower? Yes, on the right. For students, or in fact, for any travelers on a limited budget, it is a great place to stay, and you don't have to sing the song. Practically right across the street from the YMCA Tower starts Hotel Row in Jerusalem. My favorite is the Don. I spent some time there with a friend of mine. And the Kings, where I spent some time there with family. The Kings is great because it's right across the street from the conservative movement and reform movement seminaries, and the oldest conservative synagogue in Jerusalem, and Reform synagogue down the block. The nice thing about the Kings is that you can order Friday night meals and invite guests in, pay for it in advance, and have shops lunch there and pay for that in advance, and get to almost everywhere in Jerusalem easily. One of my favorite hotels. However, if you walk down the street away from downtown Jerusalem, you will find the most iconic of the hotels, the King David. Short story. I'll tell you a little bit of history about the King David first. The King David was blown up by the Irgun as send a message to the British to speed up the process of Israel's liberation. A message was sent in advance, but the British chose to ignore it, and there were casualties. The King David, though, is a great place to stay. I never thought I would stay there, but a friend of mine made a small mistake. She had me take her daughter back to Israel for a tour again after her Hebrew high school tour, and she wanted us to stay in the same place as the Hebrew high school tour had stayed, and somehow mistook the King's Hotel for the King David. And when I said to her, Sue, it's not the same hotel. She said, what's the difference? I said, about $400 a night. But we stayed in the King David. It was a really amazing hotel. The room we stayed in came equipped with fluffy white bathrobes and gorgeous room, most beautiful bathroom I've ever seen in Jerusalem. I even snuck my son in to sleep on the chair for Shabbos. But the best meal I have ever eaten, the breakfast buffet at the King David was wonderful, but the lunch buffet is unreal. You pay for it in advance, and the room is full of all different kinds of foods, hot foods, cold foods. They've got hot plates going. I would say that room is even bigger than our whole TBS EV campus. Wow. Did I get through all of Jerusalem in an hour? Wow. I hate to say goodbye to Jerusalem because it's one of my favorite places to be. But we never really say goodbye or lehitraot to Israel. And after our seders, we always give our wish, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. May next year be in Jerusalem. And I'm hoping you enjoyed our 8-week tour